All right. What's going on, Mr. Andrew Lee?
Oh, not much. Just another day in paradise, as you know.
So, this is the second time you've been on the show, right?
Yeah, man. It's been a long time though.
It's
Probably
probably been
four or
like a
five
year or
years.
two.
No,
Probably a year or two,
it's been longer than that. It has to be.
maybe three.
Yeah, maybe three. Yeah.
So, I'm just scrolling through my YouTube channel trying to find the episode, but I think you were in the 30s last time you were on. So it's episode, I think, 130 something now. Um, so it's the EricSwahnRacing.com podcast episode, I think 136 or 137 with Andrew Lee. So thanks again for coming on. You've been racing in Moto America again, still, I should say, right? And been doing pretty well in the Superbike class, right? Superbike Cup, all that good stuff.
Yeah. We've dabbled. The last few seasons has definitely been a little bit different. But yeah, I got to race with Altus this year for the final round of Stock 1000. Unfortunately, I didn't get to race in Superbike. Which is kind of like a turbulent feeling because it was also like 110 degrees. So I'm like, okay, like I'm not missing out too much
Right.
on that. So those people that did double duty in Texas were good for them. I did not want to do it.
It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of work. I mean, that track's really physical. I've never been there before, so it was yeah, it's definitely a learning curve.
For sure. And I just found the episode. It was number 31, December 31st, posted 2020.
Okay, so it was 20. Okay, so just a little under 3 years.
Yep. So what's changed since then?
How much time you got?
I
A
got about
lot's
an hour
changed.
and a half, maybe
Yeah,
two.
yeah. No, a lot's changed, not in the paddock as much as I'd like to be. Life changes, moving around a lot and trying to, bump and grind through life. Uh, but yeah, it's been a journey. I think I'd like to paddock a little bit more next year, so that's kind of where our sights are set a little bit and see what we can do.
Sure. So tell everybody, what did you do this year? What were your stats like, your finishes? How'd you do in the season?
Oh man. Little comical actually. So this year is the least I've ever raced in my last 20 years racing.
Really?
Um yeah, um so in January I was coaching at Chuckwalla with Jason Pridmore. So did a couple like one-on-ones coaching down there in January.
That's
And then
JP43.
yep, JP 43. Yep. And so I did that in January. And then the next time I was on a motorcycle, I think was in July
So
at a
quite
dirt
a
bike
big gap
track.
then. Quite a big gap.
Yeah. Yeah. So in July, I think I rode my friend's dirt bike in exchange for me taking photos for him.
Okay.
And I rode about 10 minutes that day. And then the next time I was on a motorcycle was the week before Coda. I went and rode Supermoto with my roommate for about 4 hours. So I got probably, 50 laps in and then flew to Coda. So, yeah, yeah, it's definitely been the least I've ever rode. And that's it's a little crazy. Yeah, it's just insane. And then at Coda, I had to learn a new track, working with a new team. Um, I mean, not riding a bike really competitively since Barber the year previous. So almost an entire year. I think I looked at the my calendar or I googled it. I was like, how many days was between now and then I did Barber's date. It was like 350 days, and that was the last time I raced.
Almost a full year.
Yeah. So
So how
yeah,
much does
definitely
it really
crazy.
feel like it affects you? Do you feel rusty? Do you feel like you got cobwebs you're trying to shake off in the first few sessions? Or are you getting right back to it? What do you feel like?
You know, it didn't really feel that bad. The issue was obviously there was a little rust, but if it was at a track I knew, I don't think it would be as big of an issue. But it was coming off the couch, not being riding a lot, and then 2 is at a track I've never been to. And then Moto America, obviously, you don't get practice. Like you're
Yeah.
just kind of straight into it. So we had one practice and then straight into qualifying. So yeah, I think I would consider Friday a complete wash because learning a bike, learning a track, and being off the couch. But yeah, a little weird. Is I don't think it was too bad, but um, it's kind of like that fun game of measuring your own expectations and obviously wanting to be in the podium fight, but you haven't rode a motorcycle in a year, so
Sure. Now, when I contacted Wera to see if I was still eligible for expert plates or if I had to go back to novice after having a couple years off, they're like, yeah, as long as you're white plate, people tend to stay white plates, meaning expert, you know. So people
right.
generally don't revert back to novice, but at a professional status, it's hard to stay at the top, 10% of the country after not riding for a year. So yeah, you might lose a little, but you're not going to lose, half your speed. That's not going to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. The delta is definitely different. Obviously, you're gonna have that little gap. But I remember in 2018, for contrast, I did all of AFM on the West Coast. I did all of CVMA, and then I did all of Moto America, and then I did the Suzuki 8 hour. So I think there was like 30 plus weekends that I was actively competing at a racetrack. So
Way different. Yeah.
yeah.
Understandable. So what changed this year? Was it a lack of funding or were you busy with other stuff?
Yeah, it started with the lack of funding. It just I didn't really throw together a good sponsorship package for the year, and you know, everything comes together in March, April, May, and, and which is too late. So I decided to not kind of go half-assed into the season. Um, and then I got a 9 to 5, and life got turbulent, and yeah, I just didn't really have the capabilities of putting anything together from that point forth. Um, but right now we're on track. We're trying to get all the decks put together and moving forward. So it's trying to get ahead of the curve.
Good. Good to hear. So,
Yeah.
what's your goals for next year? Are you planning on doing a full season? What class? What kind of bike?
Um. At this point, my goals are really low. It's to be competing. I don't really care at what capacity. If it's a I mean, at this point, a junior cup bike would do. So yeah, I just want to be out there, and it's like miss the family, miss the paddock. It's it's a part of me for the last 20 years. So that's where I think I need to be. So I don't really know what that entails as of today, but I think it's going to be the right direction. Just kind of figure out where I fit in, see what we can make happen.
And you mentioned the junior cup. Are you eligible for that still? Don't you age out at a certain point?
Yeah, you age out at 28, so I've got another 3 years.
Okay, nice. I didn't know exactly
I'm
how old you
24,
were.
so 25 next season.
Gotcha.
No,
All right.
yeah, I'm 24. I'm being
Hard button on this computer. And we can keep going. All right. Cool. Now we're recording again. Sorry about this. Should be
no,
better on this one,
got all the computers and technology, but none of it will work.
right? I just need to upgrade my setups here. I'm a couple years in with the same setup from when I started back in probably February of 2020. And they're getting overloaded. So that's how it goes. But how are you with technology? What are you working with over there?
I've got a Air Apple laptop. I don't know. AirBook Pro. AirBook Pro, I think, is what they call these things.
All right, MacBook Pro.
MacBook. There you go.
I used to have one
Yeah,
years ago.
I'm 24 and I don't even know what technology is. I I'm not a big cell phone guy, but I got like a 14 Pro this year. I'm like an every 6 years kind of guy on phones. I don't like spending money on them. I hate being on them. So spending money on them for me is like that kind of. But then it starts freezing, and then you're like, okay, I need a new phone.
Is that like a Samsung or a Nokia?
Yeah, no, yeah, right. The funny thing though is like the only reason I ever buy new phones is because the batteries die so quickly. And when you're traveling in the airports and stuff, it's like that's the last thing you want to be doing is like obviously we all got them on our phones nowadays, like the boarding passes and stuff. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be rushing through the airport like, oh crap, my phone's at 4%. I can't make my flight.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
you lose that, you
that's
lose
it's
everything. You
just
lose
the anxiety. I don't want it.
your navigation, your directions. I don't really memorize many phone numbers anymore. Some people don't even know their own phone number.
No. Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding. Especially nowadays. The only phone number I would have is like my mom's, and I'd call my mom. She'd be like, I don't know what you want me to do, man. Like, good luck.
Yeah. There's no
Just wish you
taxis
luck.
around
Hope
anymore.
for the best. No, no. You'd be kind of SOL. And then forgetting your charger, another like that's just even worse. You don't want to do that.
Nowadays they
Yeah.
have all
Then you have
these
to go buy
power
a new
banks
one.
you can use. I have a solar powered one you can leave out in the sun. It'll recharge itself. That's pretty nice.
I've seen those. I've had them. Somehow I find a way to lose them all the time though. Like I always lose them. I don't understand how. I used to be the worst with iPhone cords. Like I just leave them places. And a few years ago, somebody got me a gift of like six of them in like an Amazon package for Christmas, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, lost them all. But that's fine.
It'll last you a few months anyways.
Yeah, right. Like you budget for about one a month at that point, right? You get half a year out of it, and you're good.
It probably end up where all your old socks and loose change goes right down the seat cushions.
I was talking to somebody about that the other day. I I feel like I have an adequate amount of socks, but for whatever reason, I don't have all gone. So it's the most confusing thing to me. Like, I you have 20 pairs of socks, and then you have none that are pairs, and then the ones that you have somehow get lost, and then I don't know. I don't. It's blows my mind. I don't get it.
For sure. So tell me, what's on your mind you wanted to talk about today? Is there anything specific you wanted to cover?
Nothing. I was just, chit chat. So why are you in Vegas? Like what brought you out there?
Yeah, so I moved out to Las Vegas January and been out here. I don't plan on moving out or anywhere else really in the foreseeable future. I got a job out here. I'm a sports car racing coach now for Exotics Racing Speed Vegas, just south of the Strip, about 8 miles. We
There
got
you go.
a private racetrack out there. We also have a go-kart track. There's an off-road track that they have jumps, like big buggies type of thing. Just it's not like the trophy trucks, just a little bit smaller than that, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then we're planning on expanding our racetrack that's about 1.3 miles right now to be longer and I guess longer straightaway. And I think it's about a 2,000 foot straightaway, something like that. So you get about up to 120, 140, depending on what car you're in. And then we're also trying to expand to have more off-road capabilities like renting ATVs and UTVs and things like that you can just go explore out in the middle of the desert and just kind of have fun with it. I think that's coming in the next year or so. But yeah, I moved
That's
out
cool.
here. So we have a fleet of, I don't know, 30 to 40 race cars, supercars, sports cars, whatever you want to call them. And we have different tiers of coaching levels. So there's like tier 1, 2 through tier 6. They used to have tier 7, but we got rid of that car because it was really, really difficult to drive for most people and it ended up spinning a lot. So it was kind of too costly to maintain type of thing. So we got 6 tiers now. Since January, I'm moving up provisional tier 4 right now, which is cool. So moving up fairly quickly. So the tiers are based on difficulty of the car to drive and the expense of it. Tier 1 is Porsche GTS and GT4, also the Nissan GTR. But the GTS has kind of gone away. That's kind of was our slowest car. So we got rid of that one and we're just staying with the lowest one of the Porsche GT4 that came in 718, which really isn't, it shouldn't be categorized so low. It's actually a really great car. That's one of my number one recommendations for anybody. Anybody who has a driver's license over 18 can come do this. It's like $200 to do 5 laps. It's not technically a racing school, but it's more of a driving experience. So I'd say most of our customers, it's their first time ever on a racetrack. But we get everybody up to like Formula One drivers and everything in between. So you never know who you're going to get in the car. And I'm the guy in the passenger seat coaching you through the experience of what to do, where to brake, where to turn, how to accelerate, what not to do, how not to spin the car, that kind of thing. So it's a really cool experience. I'll go through the tiers if we got time, so why not?
Yeah. What's a tier 7? That's what I'm really curious. What can't people drive?
7 was the Lamborghini Super Trofeo GT4 spec race car. It might have been GT3. I didn't really get to coach in that car, so I don't really know all the specs about it. But that was our fastest car that people had the lap record with. But in the race cars, we have a handful of race cars like the Ferrari Challenge Evo and the McLaren 570S GT4 spec race cars that aren't street legal. Everything else is technically could be street legal, but they're not plated for that. So the race cars are the easiest cars to spin because they're so powerful compared to everything else. Right. And also, normally, like if they don't try to spin the car, but they're doing an action that creates a rotation that could spin it unintentionally. So I'm over here grabbing the wheel and fixing the slide so we don't spin. And so in the race car, there's no top and bottom on the steering wheel to grab. It's just like the Formula One style wheel with no top and bottom. So it's like, how are you supposed to save that as a coach? It's like you're grabbing their hand, you really can't do anything. So that's why those cars spin the most, is because they're just way more difficult to drive and the coach can't save it. You're just talking to them, trying to help them save it. You're like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, that's cool though. I've seen that like the experiences and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I wish I would love to do that. That'd be a lot of fun.
It's a blast, and anybody can do it. I'd highly recommend anybody. And motorcycle racers are way better at learning than the average person off the street, of course. So like I always coach when I talk about coaching for people who have ridden bikes, it's the same concept. When you have a lot of lean angle on a bike, or when you have a lot of steering angle in a car, you have a small amount of throttle. Once you start coming up, or once you start, reducing that steering angle, you can add more throttle. It's the same idea. It's just different vehicle, and you have a couple of extra wheels on a car than you do on a bike. So it's really the same idea. It's just different vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. That's car racing has always just been appealing to me, just because the industry around it's obviously really involved in it.
Yeah.
But man, it's do you watch like IMSA and stuff? Like do you watch any car racing, since now you're kind of like in that kind of niche yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I used to work at a motorcycle shop, sport bike track gear years ago. And that's how I got my start into the industry, really. But now I'm working at a car place. And, in the break room at STG, we'd always watch motorcycle racing. Here we watch car racing. So it's like it's a different group of people. But we still have a couple, probably a handful, maybe 10 or more people that ride bikes. I mean, they're motorsports enthusiasts. I love cars. I love bikes. They love cars, they love bikes. It's the same kind of deal. It's just a lot more Formula One fans and IMSA and GT World Series, SRO World Championship fans, I'd say, and NASCAR, and a lot of drifting guys here. There's a huge drifting community in Vegas, and we have drifting at the racetrack as well. You can't drift the car unless you're like Ken Block or something. You can get a drift experience where you're in the passenger seat. We have a Dodge Hellcat 700 horsepower beast, and we go out there drifting a couple laps and come in, and everybody's like, "Holy crap! I didn't know a car could do that." It's awesome. So a couple of guys have competed in Formula Drift and won few events and I think a championship. So top
That's
level
cool.
Formula drifting while you're on the track at the same time. It's not like, I mean, you could rent the whole track, but that's going to cost way more than you want to spend. So you typically have other cars on the track with you and the drift car. And we do discovery laps. So you first come there and you do 2 laps as a warm up with sitting in the passenger seat, and the coach who's doing the briefing, the classroom session, tells you about, this is where you're going to be braking. We have cones to tell you where to brake. We have turn points out there marked with green cones and apex cones. So it's very easy to do visually. Just turn here, brake there. And it's simple, we make it easy for you to learn. And I think it's great. It's a lot of fun. So now I'm coaching in also the Corvette C8, the Stingray. We have 2 of those. We have the Audi R8. We have the Shelby GT500, which is a fast car. Also the Acura NSX, which is a hybrid, front wheel drive by the electric motor, rear wheel by the engine, which is kind of cool. And also I'm now coaching in the Ferrari 488 GTB, which is the next level tier 4 car. I just began coaching in that one, which is a big step up in speed and power. It's a lot of fun. Next one I'll be doing is the Mercedes AMG GTR. I've warmed it up a few times in the morning warm-ups, but haven't coached in that one yet. But also, we're doing the Lamborghini Gallardo, the Ferrari F430, and the Aston Martin Vantage F1 edition car. So doing a bunch of brands right now. It's fun to learn all these different cars. You drive one car, it's dramatically different than the next. Just like probably a Suzuki and a Yamaha. Every car drives way different. They all have their own unique characteristics and benefits and negatives. So people are always asking me, "What's your favorite car? What car do you want to drive?" I'm like, well, whatever car I'm in right now, you just have to learn how to drive that particular car. Some cars have way too much understeer and they just slide like crazy in the entry corners. Some cars are just crazy powerful and you got to be really careful with your acceleration. So some are really slow. So it's like every car is way different.
Yeah, it's like riding a junior cup bike versus a
super bike,
a ZX10. Yeah, totally. No, that's what have you had, what was like the worst coaching experience you've had there so far, you think?
Well, it's just people who don't listen. That's the hardest part. It's like most people are pretty nervous. They've usually never done it before. And I'm just like, just listen to what I have to say. We'll go really fast and have fun and we'll be safe. Some people, it's like they think they know how to drive. Like, I've been driving for 40 years. What does this young kid know? And they just don't listen at all and they have a horrible time. And it's not because of what I'm saying. Every single person has different bad habits or tendencies or things that they always do in the car. And those things can't be fixed in 5 minutes. It's just not going to happen. But as a generally, women are really good listeners because they don't have this huge ego. They're just like, tell me what to do. I want to learn. Like, I would just want to have fun. Just, tell me what to do. I'll do it. And the guys sometimes just really have these fixed opinions about what to do with the car, and they just don't work at the racetrack. So a lot of people say the worst time I've had in a car, just people aren't looking where they want to go. They're looking essentially at the hood ornament on the front of the car, and they're not like looking at all down the track. So that everywhere it's just like jerky and like they're yanking on the wheel because they're not ready for what's coming up. They have no idea what the next thing is other than 5 feet in front of the car. And I'm like, where are you going, sir? The track goes that way. Like, why are you going to the right? There's like so many instances where it's like, man, we should write a book of all the things that have ever happened in the car. Because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, turn in. I might not say a direction every time. It's like, you know which way the track goes by now, right? So I'm like, okay, turn in. And they say, which way? I'm like, excuse me, that way's the gravel, that way's the road, let's go to the left. It's like, do you really have to say these things? I mean, sometimes I might say throttle, and they're like, "What's throttle?" Throttle's the gas, accelerate, go faster, vamos, let's go. Like
Yeah, right. No kidding. You're
down
like,
to the
what is
floor
that?
farther. Yeah. Or like we get in the car and it scares you sometimes. You get in the car and you're like, okay, foot on the brake. They're like, where's the brake? Like you have your driver's license, right? Okay, well, it's just throttle on the gas on the right, brake on the left, just like your normal car. Oh, okay. Oh, I got you. And then I go to put the key in. I'm like, that's the throttle. That's the other one.
Oh man, have you? Do you guys have any manuals? Do you guys have any of those?
Oh, yep. All the cars are automatic or paddle shifting, except for the race cars have to be in manual.
Gotcha.
So
I guess
most,
it's no
yeah,
stick shift then.
no stick shifts. It's all paddle shifting, PDK. It's just faster, and I think it's less wear and tear. So no clutches are necessary. It's pretty nice. It's easier. I wish we did have the actual manual shifter in the middle. I think some people do want that. It's not as fast, of course, but it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's. I mean, that's part of the appeal, right? Like, not a
Yeah.
lot of people are trying to get picked up by Ferrari, so so having the that little uh feeling of that would be cool. Cool. I mean, I've not drove too much stick myself, but um, I think that's part of the experience for sure.
Yeah, and like one of our cars, the Ferrari F430, is not the fastest car by any means, but it's the loudest car by far. It is ridiculous. That car is why I wear earplugs at the track every day because it's not doesn't have a muffler. It's just a straight pipe exhaust. And so at nighttime we do night events. We did one just last night actually. We were there till like 9:15 p.m. And so we have lights at the track. But if you're behind the car, you can see fire spitting out of the exhaust and so we had to take the mufflers off because they were catching on fire too much. So it's super loud. And so I'm looking to buy a megaphone to use in that car just because it's hard to coach. I'm yelling the whole time. And then you get the student who'll say, before we even get in the car, like, I can't hear so well. Can you make sure you speak loud? I'm like, oh, great.
Oh boy, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, you got the loudest one we have, buddy. Like let's go. Let's figure it out.
So you've been there since January, you said?
Yep, about 8, 9 months now.
How'd you get that gig?
I just applied. I lived in Michigan for 30 years, never moved out of the state. And, I'd been coaching at that point when I applied for 4 different organizations and for bikes. And, they saw all my history. I've done car events with track days and autocross racing. And I have a lot of go-karting experience. I've won championships in that, as well as mountain bikes and road racing for motorcycles. So, a lot of motorcycle experience, but also I've been a track marshal for 19 organizations from Formula One to MotoGP, motorcycles, everything in between, flat track. Um, so they just saw my history and like scheduled an interview. I did well at the interview and they offered me a job. I did a week test run in last year, almost about a year ago now, from late November to early December. It went well. I did 6 days. It gave me one day off in the middle. It went well. And I decided to move across the country 2,000 miles. So never moved out of state, like I mentioned, but it's pretty cool living in Las Vegas. I'm just 3 miles from the strip, just south of it. So I'm not going partying every night or going to the nightclubs because it's expensive to live here, way more than Michigan was. It's probably not the most
Right. Yeah, totally.
expensive compared to like California or something, but more than I'm used to. So just trying to save money. It's a good job. People usually tip pretty well if they're renting a Ferrari for the afternoon. So it's a good job. There's not a whole lot of paid coaching jobs. A lot of times they just want you to coach for free. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't travel across the country to coach your organization for free and then not get paid. So this is a good opportunity. I took the chance, and now I have all these different car manufacturers I've coached for on my resume, and it's been over 2,000 students so far, and I've had zero spins or offs or incidents or anything like that. So I don't think all the coaches can say that who work there, which is cool. It's probably gonna happen one day that I'll have a spin that I can't catch, but so far so good.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right? It's not an if, it's a win.
Yeah, I hope
You're
not, but
behind the wheel enough.
so far, I mean, you can spin any car if you try hard enough. But so far, I've been able to catch every single one, which is hard to do. Like you just have to have cat-like reflexes, and I don't have a wheel in front of me. I got to use theirs.
I'm gonna come down there and request you and spin out right away. They're gonna be like,
Oh man,
"What's this guy doing?" I'll be like, "Hey man, heard it on a podcast. I don't know. I just had to come
right?
and ruin the streak.
That
How
would
to
be a
ruin
target.
it."
No, but there's people who will say, like, I had someone say yesterday that I asked them, you try to get a gauge for what their experience level is. Like, have you ever done this before? You know, what's your goal today? Do you want to go slow, medium, fast? And some people will say, I just don't want to die today. Well, I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. Just, I think we're going to be just fine. Just listen to what I have to say. We'll have fun. And then other people
It's a
say, I
good goal
want
to have, though.
to, of course. And other people say, I want to set a lap record. Like, okay, well, that's going to be a completely different set of coaching, you know?
Yeah, that's funny. I just don't want to die. You're like, me too, man. Like,
Me
I'm
too,
in the
yeah.
same boat.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I'm,
we're in
I'm,
the
I'm
same boat.
wanna go home tonight.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I completely different, obviously, because I coach people that have already been on the track and already kind of have goals and aspirations. I couldn't imagine just taking some people basically just, oh, you have your driver's license. Let me try to get you to go fast down the racetrack.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I watch people drive every day, and it's quite impressive how bad some of these people are. So I can't even imagine some of them being like, let's go get behind the wheel of a Ferrari today. I'd be like, oh man, I don't think maybe the Prius is best for you here.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're totally right. They probably shouldn't be starting in some of the cars that they start off in. But we have no stepped ladder system like Europe has with their licensing. It's just like you got the money to pay for it, let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And then at that point, they're like, "What do you think?" You're like, "I just don't want to die."
Yeah.
That's
Well,
when you reply
honestly,
with that.
like after 2,000 students, you have the whole range of race car drivers to like your first day with this driver's license at 18 years old driver. And so at the beginning, yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking, especially first time coaching in a new car with a new student. And so after a while, you realize that yes, they're behind the steering wheel, the driver's seat, but you are in control. The coach is in control of the car. No matter what happens, it's my job to keep the car and the contents safe. So like I will not let them go off the track. I will not let them have too much throttle mid corner. I don't have a throttle on my side. I do have a brake if I need it, and I definitely use the wheel. But yeah, like a lot of times they'll hammer the throttle mid corner with tons of steering angle, and on a bike that's a high side. In a car that's a spin. So I'm like, I like to let them light up the tires a little bit to feel that cars yank sideways a little so that they can scare the crap out of themselves and realize that's not what to do. Because sometimes you have to go over to the limit to realize where it is, right? So a little bit's okay. And then sometimes if it really scared them, they just knock it down 80% the rest of the time. And they're like, oh, I got to change my shorts. I'm done. Let's go in. That's enough for me. And sometimes that
Right?
happens.
Totally.
Yeah, and then sometimes they're like, "Oh, I understand now," and then they don't do that ever again, and then they're a way better driver. So there's some give and take that you have to let them kind of drive poorly for them to understand what not to do.
Yeah, yeah. And then having to walk that line too, where you don't have a lot of control yet. Like you said, you have a brake, and then you have reaching over to the steering wheel. So you're doing some reasonings. You're like, maybe this person doesn't know what they're doing a little bit. I'm going to be a little less lenient.
Yeah, and then of course there's always going to be a driver who's faster than you, right? And then I'm learning stuff in the car, and then there's not a whole lot of coaching. It's like just kind of you're nitpicking at what could possibly be improved upon.
And you said it's only 5 laps.
I mean, sometimes we'll have corporate events, they'll do four. But you can buy up to 50. So some people will do, you know, will do 5, 10 cars, 5 laps a piece. Some people will do 20 laps, 3 different cars. Um, so it all depends on what you want to purchase. But yeah, the standard is typically 5 laps, and you can purchase any lap you want, a la carte type of thing.
That's interesting. That's cool. I mean, that's a business that, you wouldn't really think of at first, but I mean, what better place to do it though? Honestly,
Yeah,
Vegas is where it has to be.
so we get tons of tourists. There, all people from all over the world. A lot of times, people who don't speak English. So that's fun to coach them.
Yeah, doesn't Travis Wyman do some sort of like Ford experience out there?
Yep. He does. He's with Ford Performance with the off road and I think the on road, like the Mustangs and all that stuff, the Shelbys. Um, actually, with another guy from work that I work with. So I think he actually did Speed Vegas at one point, but not any longer. He used to work at the same company.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I mean, what better job for a racer than basically just going fast all the time?
Yeah, it's
That's
great. Like up to my average is like 13, 14 students a day, but it's been ticking up. Like yesterday, I had 24 students in a day. That was my maximum I ever had. But that was a corporate event. We went to 9 p.m., so that's not the general thing. But yeah, it's great. You get to learn. Anytime you're coaching, like you do in the JP43 Academy, you learn when you're coaching. Like you say something
Mhm.
to another student, and you're like, wait a minute, am I doing that? I might be doing that. I should stop doing that, right?
Yeah. I feel like the cool thing of coaching for me, I've been doing it since I was 16, I think. So I've got a few years under my belt. Learning how to kind of understand the personality that you're coaching too. I mean, because I can tell you one thing and obviously you'll interpret it one way, and then your neighbor would not understand that at all. So, I mean, from 16 years old on, I've been kind of been able to understand a little bit that a lot of it's just understanding how to articulate what your goals are for them to have. And I think that's been my favorite part, was more so just learning how to communicate with different types of people from different walks of life. And like, I mean, I've coached people that were pilots, and then I've coached people that, work for Snap on. I've worked for like people that have accounting degrees, and like, all these different walks of life, and trying to boil points down to like I'm teaching the same lesson with different vocabularies and different, you know, action items and stuff. And I've loved that. It's really fun to do.
Yeah. So what is I mean, I know you guys focus on the whole gamut of the skills and technique at the racetrack, but what do you notice most people are struggling in with their skill set at the track with motorcycle coaching?
Man, what is the I would say overslowing.
Overslowing for the
Um
corners, yep, that's common.
yeah, I would say that's probably number one. And then I would say number two is just kind of a one shoe fits all kind of style for corner entry. I feel like everyone just assumes that they have to use all of the racetrack. Meanwhile, there's corners that for we do a lot of our coaching at Chokwala, and there's I could count a few corners where I'm inside of half track entering on a fast lap, and they're trying to go fast, and they're using the entire racetrack, and it's pretty interesting. But also when you're doing that, you're going to overslow to get back to the apex, and there's like so it's kind of one of those things where I would say those are probably the two common ones. And it's funny because like when you're sitting there, we do like a morning debrief with our students, and they kind of bring it up, and it's like, okay, well, I instantly at that point kind of have an idea of where the day is going to go, and then it's kind of funny when like sometimes you kind of have that preconceived notion of like, okay, well, this is going to be like what we're working on, and then it's like you get out there, it's like, oh wait, nope, not that. We've got a big issue over here. We got to fix.
Yeah, for sure. So it's more of like the braking technique or how much speed you can carry into the corners and line choice is what you're working on the most, you'd say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of novice track day people, they just kind of I mean, the idea of trail braking is where people kind of get a little finicky on because, the more lane angle you have, the more likelihood you are to fall. So a lot of people tend to just slam the brakes upright and then just drop it and kind of like roll through the corner.
Yeah.
And then and it's I got into golf the last few years, and it's one of those things where it's like it's a whole chain of events, and if you mess up one portion of it, the rest is kind of like having to correct your mistake. And so if you're having that as your issue on the racetrack, then there's four other things after that point that you've kind of developed to kind of fix that. So it's like a lot of people are grabbing like wait, like slamming on the throttle, and there's so many times we coach on stock bikes, and it's like so many times I'm behind people like, oh my gosh, like this person is going to the moon, and I'm holding on for dear life on a stock ZX6, like because they're checking up at the entrance of a corner on their R1, rolling through the middle of the corner, and then just whacking the throttle, and I'm over here like, oh god, oh god.
We call those screamer parkers, right? Because they're screaming down the straightaway, then they stop in the middle of the corner, then they scream after, but there's no corner speed.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I haven't rode a little bike for many years now, but I'll be coaching. We do it during track days and stuff, and like I'll watch an R1 go by, and then I just hear like a little Ninja 300 go by, and I'm like, you poor soul. Like I know you've been back there the whole time, and Todd on his R1 isn't letting you through.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's brutal.
So in regards to the whole overslowing, that's probably so common because when I talk to new students about it, I'm like, well, how many times did you go off the racetrack today? They're like, well, zero. Well, that means you could go faster in every single corner, right? They're like, oh yeah, I never thought about that.
Right? Yeah. The the thing I attribute the overslowing to is kind of what you're saying with like the tier 7 cars and stuff is it's like realistically, if this is your first year on a motorcycle, probably shouldn't be on a 1000, right? And so when you're at that point going to turn 1, you're doing 150 and you're like, "Oh crap, I'm scared," and they slam on the brakes. It's like a reaction, I've always said, where if you kind of go down the straightaway and rolled off 100 yards earlier, you would never be like, slam on the brakes. And I always equate it to like, because like you said earlier, it's like the racetrack, you already know the layout. If it's 2 p.m. and it's Sunday and you rode yesterday and you're riding today, you know that turn 1's going left. Like it hasn't changed in the last 50 laps. It won't change for the next 50 laps. That's the racetrack. And so I always say, like, when you're in your car on your way to work and you see the stop sign that's been there for 6 years, you're not like rolling up to it and then slamming on the brakes like, oh gosh, the stop sign. So it's always funny because the only difference there is speed. You're just going 100 miles per hour quicker.
It's just maybe familiarity, and I think a big part of it is people don't understand what type of G-force is acceptable for a crash or not. Like they're like, most of the time in the car, they say, I didn't know the car could do that. I didn't know the car could stick that well. And they're like, I wish I would have trusted the tires more, or I wish I would have listened to you better and trusted you more. I didn't know that was possible with that car. It just, most people don't experience that type of G-force ever unless they have to brake really hard. If someone pulls out right in front of them and they're about to hit them, that's the only time they experience that G-force. And like, I never want to do that again. But that's like
right.
time in the braking zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. That's on racing. You don't really get on sport bikes. You don't really get that experience of being able to control it while having like somebody experience like you. Because like you have the 2-up rides, and so Pridmore does a lot of 2-ups and stuff, and I always hear people come off like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing! Like I didn't realize how smooth you could be, and like how fast you're going, and so on and so forth." And what I'll say is 2-ups scare the crap out of me. Like front, back, doesn't matter. Not for me. It's not my life. So yeah, it's a trip that it's kind of that understanding is interesting.
Yeah, we do high speed ride alongs, which I highly recommend to anybody who's trying to go faster because it's typically 5 to 10 to 20 seconds, depending on who you are, faster per lap than each student. So like you get in the car with a professional driver and you're like, holy crap, I didn't know that car could do that. It's the same thing. And so it's like, it really lets you model or see what's possible and what the driver is doing with the wheel and the pedals and all the controls to see what you can really do, just like the 2-up ride. Now I wanted to ask, do you ever do intercom training, like headset communication between your riders?
I don't. I know Corey Alexander does that with his students, which is interesting. I think that it's one of those things where you get to be able to, like you said, maybe a little bit more hands-on with it. Especially because I think it'd be really beneficial, like on a long racetrack like Road America, because like you do 4 laps in front of somebody, kind of or a lap in front, they do 3 laps, and you're like, okay, they're not fixing X, Y, and Z, so then you have to get in front of them, and then you have to go another like it's basically 4 minutes off of your 20-minute session just to do an in lap out lap, and yeah, I've not done it. I think it's great. You utilize the technology if you have it, right? So I've not really talked to Corey about it too much on what his experiences are with it, but I mean, I can imagine that it'd be beneficial for sure.
Yeah, when I coached for California Superbike School, I mean, they just use hand signals. There's not really any communication with the rider verbally, but that's the biggest difference with being in the car is you can talk to them. You can tell them what to fix right after they did it. So it's a little bit more of the immediate feedback. It was really strange going from the bike coaching to the car coaching because one's really verbal, one I don't really talk at all. You talk before and after, and you use hand signals and point, but it's just so different. I guess I never really realized how much more talking would be involved in car coaching.
Yeah, especially when you're sitting 2 feet from them, right? Like that's something where you've got those capabilities a little bit more. But
Yeah,
do you feel like sometimes it's a detriment though? Do you feel like you overwhelm
over talk. Yeah,
people?
yeah, that's a big thing because you want to give them all the information possible, and also it's our job as coaches to talk the whole time. So like we're not supposed to,
Mhm.
unless the driver's like really fast and he knows what they're doing, you have to call out break every time there's a break zone. Because what if it's a new student? You didn't say break that time, they didn't break. It's like, well, that's your fault because you didn't tell them to break. So it's a bit of a fine line to walk, because even for shifting, like I like for them to be independent with what they're doing. They say, will you tell me when to shift? I'm like, yes, but when that line goes to there, press the button. Like you should be able to do this yourself. And I want you to be independent and be able to do it. So sometimes I won't say shift. And if they hit the limiter, I'm like, okay, I got to say it every time, you know? Or sometimes you say shift and they say, which way? I'm like, we're accelerating. You should go up.
I think that's a good idea. Let's move up a gear, possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't want that money
Let's try
shift.
it out.
So yeah, it's
Oh
varying
man,
degrees of difficulty
that
with students.
it's yeah, it's. I feel like you sometimes have to talk about things that you never would have thought you'd have to speak about, especially because you have those people that have been driving for 30 years.
Yeah. Or we get a lot of people who will so probably once a day it happens, at least,
Uh,
where they want to do paddle shifting. And so I tell them about all of it. And sometimes the shifters are stationary. They don't move with the wheel, like in the Ferrari F430 and the Lamborghini Gallardo. They're older cars. The shifters don't move. So people go to shift and they hit the wipers and the lights every time. Like we got a great clean windshield today, but we're stuck in third. You know?
yeah, we're still in third.
Still in third. Those are your wipers. Those are your lights. So it's just because people want to move their hands around the wheel and they shuffle steer. So they lose their center and then they forget where their shifters are.
Yeah. What's the biggest mistake for a driver behind the wheel in one of the higher tiers? Let's just say, like, what's the average thing that you've seen in your days there?
It's just too early turn-ins. We have a couple really long left-handers, like 180s and probably over 180, 200 degree or more. And so people just want to turn in as soon as they see the corner, and that really cuts off their corner speed. You know, what's the faster corner? The one that's tighter or the one that's wider? The wider one. You can carry more speed. Is it wider the radius, wider the arc of the corner, the more speed you can carry. So it's very counterintuitive to get to the outside of the track, have a really, really wide turn and slow steer to the outside, and then kind of for the apex instead of going straight to the curbing when you first see it. So that's probably the number one thing I have to say is stay wide, stay wide. See those cones? Want to be 20 feet closer to those cones next time, all the way to the outside of the track. That's very common because, again, your survival instincts kick in and say, corner's coming, I need to turn. Well, not yet. And then just like I did right there, they yank on the wheel. They just yank and turn real quick. So it's just like you want to have nice, smooth steering inputs, just like you're driving on the highway. Don't yank the wheel when you're going 100 miles an hour. It's not going to work out.
No.
So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing is their line choice, just wrong line. Poor vision, that's another one, is why they have a poor line. They're not looking in the right places. They usually look for that same corner. They go from their braking zone. Braking zone's fine. Then they look straight to the apex. They forget about the turn point. They forget about the mid-corner position, and they just go straight to the apex, inside of the course. So line choice, turn point, vision, throttle control, big one. You know, pulsing on, off, on, off, on, off. No progressive, smooth acceleration. It's just that light switch instead of the dimmer switch. You know, it's like there's no finesse with it. It's just straight away, full throttle. You know, nothing in between, no finesse. People are like, can I step on it? I'm like, I'd rather you not. You know, you can accelerate hard, but like let's like have a smooth progression to it. Coming out of the gate, full throttle from 0 to 100, you're gonna spin up the tires. You're gonna, you know, they think it's Fast and the Furious. Let's just go full throttle. You can get there, but not immediately. So stuff like that. Pulsing the brakes, on/off brakes, braking 7 times in the braking zone instead of 1, and then turning and braking at the same time, adding brake pressure as you steer in. That's a big one. That's how the number one way why people spin the cars is they turn in hard to the corner and then they add brake, and that rotates the car. You know, it creates that spin. So that's the number one problem. I hate that. I hate when they do that. That's the worst thing I can feel in the car is when they stab the brake mid corner.
Your heart just sinks.
And I'm like, do not do that. That is the exact textbook 101 how to spin the car. Brake hard, turn hard. It's gonna rotate. I promise.
Yeah. I put money on this one.
I promise.
I know the odds. Work in Vegas. I know the odds.
And usually you just have to steer into the corner, like just steer which way the tires should be going. Just steer that way, and it fixes itself as long as you release the brake.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those jobs where, I mean, you already kind of know what to do, but then you do it all day long. Where it's, you know, if something were to happen driving home, you already got it all. I did this for the last 6 hours. It's fine.
Yep. Yeah. So like we're driving home and it's pouring rain conditions. I'm like, I'm still doing 5 over the speed limit. Everybody's going 10 miles an hour. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, let's go.
Yeah. I mean, that has to be a big shock for you from coming from Michigan, huh? The different weather.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I moved here is because, you know, coaching in Michigan, you got to travel all over the place just to coach on a sport bike. And there weren't a lot of car coaching opportunities there because you can only do it 6 months out of the year. Here you can do it 365 days of the year. I think we're off 1 day for Christmas. That's, you know, not open anyways. But yeah, you can do it all throughout the year. I enjoy warmer weather. I'd rather travel to the snow than live in the snow. So at some days we had at least probably a week of 116-degree weather, which was pretty hot, which I'm not quite used to yet, but I'd rather have that than being on the average of 50 degrees in Michigan for the year. I like the warm weather.
Yeah, the cold, snowy winters are not necessarily my favorite. I don't do anything snow related. Like the only snow related thing I do is drive out of the snow into
Yeah.
somewhere warmer. So, yeah, up in Reno we have pretty snowy winters, and so everyone's all excited. Like, oh, we're going snowboarding. Andrew, you coming? I'm like, absolutely not. I will not be there with you guys, but I'll be
Yeah.
supporting you.
I understand that. It's not as fun in the snow. You mean I like bikinis and being at the beach. Well, there's no real beaches here, I guess, except for Lake Mead, maybe. But you're in Reno. You're not too far away, right? You're just north of me.
9 hours.
9 hours, not too far.
No, no, same time zone. So that's a step from Michigan now, but
Right.
it's so funny because I mean, it's you'll start to get this more and more as you talk to people, but I guess more so for Reno because nobody's ever going to Reno and then calling you like, oh, Eric, we're in Reno.
Oh yeah.
It's always I get phone calls from my friends from Texas like, oh, Andrew, I'm in Vegas, like come meet up, and I'm like, it's not that easy.
It's farther than you
It's
think.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like the equivalent of like San Francisco to LA. It's like people aren't in LA like, oh, let's call so and so in San Fran and have them come down for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
still
it's
don't
not
even
like
know where all the cities are in Las Vegas, like Summerlin and can even name them all off the top of my head. Henderson, Paradise. Um, I'm getting acquainted with all the areas, so yeah, I didn't even know how far Reno was from Vegas.
yeah, it's 8 9 hours just straight north.
Probably a couple 100 miles.
Five, four, 400
Okay.
maybe 3. I don't know. I've never drove it honestly. I've drove from Reno to Chuckwalla 100 times more than I've done to Vegas. I don't really like going to Vegas personally. I think the only reason that I really ever enjoyed going to Vegas was for the Monster Energy Cup,
Yeah. Is
which they don't do anymore. So
that
I have no
Supercross?
reason. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
gotcha.
that there's no reason to go there for me anymore because I live in a gambling town. So if I want to go lose $100 at blackjack, I could go do that 5 minutes from my house.
Sure. It's expensive here, man. I went down the strip the other day, got got a well tequila, soda water and lime, and it cost me 17.34 for like a drink that should cost like $4.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a big drinker myself because it's just financially not reasonable.
And then
It's
went to the
like,
hockey game, went to the preseason Golden Knights game, got a double tequila. It was $32 at the hockey game. I was like, this is you could buy the whole bottle for this. I don't understand what
yeah, right.
happened.
You're using Svedka. Like, what are we doing
Like, are they
here?
trying to have not people not drink, or the people just buy it anyway, multiple rounds?
It's it's like they're trying to make it so where you don't want to. They're like, hey, we're gonna charge you way too much, and you should not pay this. And they're like, this will tone people down. It's like I just
Deterrent.
saw. Did you see that? Yeah, did you see that California's talking about banning like Skittles and stuff?
Oh yeah, a couple colors, like the color dye.
Oh, or they did.
I'm not sure if that's why, but I assumed it
Yeah,
was
I
because
didn't
of like
read
the
the article.
dye.
I
I don't
just saw
know,
it.
maybe the ingredients or certain ingredient, maybe.
Yeah, there's two things. One thing, I saw that post and I was like, man, I really want some Skittles. And then it's like at the bottom, it's like cancer causing ingredients. And I looked at that and I'm like, man, I still really want Skittles though. I'm like, it's just
It's
that little
delicious.
uh yeah, like I saw the photo, I was like, man, that sounds really good. And it's like cancer causing issues. I was like, yeah, but what's one more bag of Skittles, right? I
Right?
mean, like,
Yeah. Yeah, man. You never know
yeah,
it
it's I'm
nowadays.
just stupid, right?
Um,
Yeah. Well, they should just make that, $10 a bag of Skittles, and that way, if people really want Skittles, they're gonna have to pay. It's like your well tequila.
that'll solve the problem, right?
Solve a problem. There's probably just gonna be a lot more broke people in America.
Yeah. So, did you used to live in California, I think?
Yeah, I lived in Fresno area, so I lived there a majority of my life. But I moved to Reno in 2018, and then just kind of been here roaming around for the last, five or so years. But um, actually looking at getting out of here. So we're not sure where to yet, but just get out of Reno and figure it out.
Maybe like Bora Bora or something, like the French Polynesian Islands.
You'll see me in Bali. I'll be
In
like the
Bali.
next Instagram influencer in Bali.
The problem
Yeah,
is those tiny islands don't have any
posting all the
racetracks,
good stuff.
right? The problem is those islands don't have any
Yeah,
racetracks.
you got to find one with a really airport.
Or you just got to build your own, and then
Yeah.
people will come.
Well, they have beaches.
You could race on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just beach racing. They ride dirt bikes on the beach. Not a problem.
Be like the old Daytona days.
I you know what? I got a Red Bull does so many cool events like that. Have you seen them do like the big beach race?
I've seen it. I don't know. I haven't watched the whole event, but I saw them advertise for it.
Yeah, I've seen like they do so many cool things. I mean, I want to meet their marketing guy because whoever's like kind of in charge of that stuff is absolutely killing it. I mean, beach racing and like they do like the hard enduro through like European towns and stuff,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
like talk about a way to get like your uh customer base involved in like community activation and stuff. It's like such a different marketing method than just putting your logo on people's helmets.
Oh
It's so
yeah.
much more than that.
And so, big race coming to Vegas in about 6 weeks or so. The Formula One circus is coming to town, and it's crazy here. They're doing so much construction and putting barriers up in front of major casinos, so you can't even walk past anymore, like Bellagio and all these. They're putting up grandstands in front of the casinos and in front of the road and everything. And they just finished the Sphere, the MSG Sphere, and all that. So people are just like camping out and just watching it from outside because it changes colors and everything. It's wild. My family and I did that a few days ago when they were in town. But yeah, I guess Formula One's spending like $4 billion on our infrastructure in an investment of the next 10 or 11-year contract that they have. And we built that massive, like $400 million footprint paddock area that's permanent structure there now. And it's wild, man. It's cool to see it all being developed. I got invited to work it as a official, as a marshal, but they don't pay their workers. So I'm like, why would I wake up and work 16-hour days from 4:30 in the morning to not get paid? So I chose not to do it. But you get in for free, but you got to work your ass off. So
Right.
I'll just be watching it from the sidelines. But it's cool to see them come to a new city like this. It's going to be an iconic race with all the hotels and casinos down the strip. Um, I just like you're saying, it's one way for them to bring the race to the people. The people don't have to go anywhere. It's one of the biggest cities in the world for tourism. So I think it's a great thing for the sport. I just wish they would build their own purpose-built racetracks with runoff, so you don't hit walls and things. As a racer, that's what I think about. It's like, yeah, maybe the drivers don't get physically, visibly injured, but if you hit a wall at 100 miles an hour, you're getting a concussion. No doubt about it, right?
Oh yeah, those G forces. I mean, the do you know if that race is going to be a night race?
It will be at night, and people are already pissed about it because it's going to start at like 10 p.m. and go into like 1 a.m. or something.
I love it.
I think it's great.
If you have a problem with that, don't go.
Right. Yeah. Who just stop following the posts about it if you don't like it.
Well, I mean, like, I do you feel like it's more so people irritated about it on the watching from out of state, or the people that are like in Vegas just
Oh yeah, it's the
know
locals
there
who
for
don't want to
gambling,
deal
not
with. Yeah,
cars?
people don't want to deal with the construction, with the strip being shut down. They're like, how am I going to get to work? I'm like, I don't know, but there's billions of dollars coming into your industry because of this event. So you should thank them. Yes, it's a pain in the butt for a little while. Yes, there's a lot of construction and dust, and it's noisy, but Like, what's the net benefit? Are you going to get way more customers because of this? Yes. Um, is it going to be a little bit annoying to drive around for a little while? Yeah. But I think it's positive.
Do you I mean, I think you'd have to forecast that you guys are going to be a little bit more busy at work, right?
Yes. I don't know how much I can say, but there's a team that bought out part of the track for certain days that were shut down for. So um, before and after, yes, we'll be really busy, but for a portion of the event, we won't be there.
Oh, that'll be cool.
So yeah, it would be nice to just have a little bit of a break. Everybody gets time off except for like a small handful of employees. There's actually a lot of people who work there. There's like over 100 employees there. It's a big place. It's actually a lot of staff. We have our own, 6 bays of mechanic shop that you can put cars in, probably 12 different cars you can service at once. We have, administration staff. There's people who are buying cars, or people are auctioning cars. People are keeping track of all the fleet inventory of like brake pads and which cars need to be changed, or rotors and tires flipped and tires changed, and you know, changing tires. Sometimes on a busy day, we'll go through like 6 sets of tires on a drift car for just one car in a day.
That's insane.
So like it's a massive operation. That's one of the reasons I moved 2,000 miles across the country for it. I'm like, this is a good company. I mean, it's not perfect. There's, probably things that could be improved, but seems pretty good to me so far.
Yeah, I feel like I mean with anything, right? It's not going to be perfect, but
Yeah, nothing's
I
perfect.
mean that I would have never have guessed 100 people work there. That would not
Yeah.
have been on my like radar.
Well, maybe not in one day, but like all on the whole staff, because we have like
Right.
25 coaches, but not 25 people working a day. Some people are off, some people work 8 days a month, some people are full time. There's a huge gamut of different situations there, right? So we got one guy, Barry, is a British guy, and he's there probably not as much as other people, but he's an older gentleman. He's been coaching for a long period of time, so it's cool to have a different, different atmosphere of people from different countries. We have a lot of Filipino people there who work there, people from Hawaii, all different nationalities and races. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, how is it having, those 20 plus coaches? Like, do you enjoy that kind of atmosphere, like camaraderie? Like, how's that kind of go?
Yeah, it's a good camaraderie. We're all, bullshitting with each other and having fun. But when it comes to coach, yeah, we're right to the point. Everybody's professional there as far as like you can't just show up with some track day experience to be a coach. You have to have like years and years, and I'm pretty sure you have to earn a race license. I don't think everybody's professional racing status, but definitely like expert, high quality coaches. Some have been coaching, like for 20, 30 years, type of thing. Coaching for sports bikes, super bikes, carts. We have professional karters, drifters, like you name it. We all come from different backgrounds, but it's all the same. It's like the same information we're conveying, but in different ways, different styles, different personalities. Some people, like to use the coach break every time. Some people like to let their students do their thing, and then they'll rein them in afterwards. Um, it's interesting. They'll review the videos. Every single session is videotaped. So we have a video looking at the road. We have a GPS showing where you are on track. We see your speed, and a video looking at the driver. So you can see yourself screaming in the car and freaking out down the straightaway. But we use it for our coaches, like quality assurance, listening to the phone thing. So we all review our coaching. That we get critiqued, and we have to hit a series of like 30 points in the car. We have to touch on shifting up, shifting down. We have to talk about passing and the cones and the mirrors, and how to accelerate properly, how to brake, how to steer. Did you correct their mistakes? Did you congratulate them? All these different points. And If we're not, we're getting marked down on our reviews, on our scores. So it gives us an opportunity. They'll say this coach did a great job with this student. Review the video. You can learn from it. You can take you can take some of their points that they said and integrate them into yours. It's nothing is proprietary information, how to drive a car.
Yeah, right.
So just steal from the best, use what they're doing. I've driven on my own, getting coached from other coaches there too, paid to do it, just like anybody else would. And I've learned stuff too from higher tier coaches above me. And I've driven the Aston Martin, the Vantage F1 car, and also just the other day the Porsche GT4. And I learned stuff both times. I'm like, this is good for me as a coach. I didn't know I could do certain things and, not get away with it, but like have the car accepted and go faster. So it's cool to be coached as well. I think it's so valuable for anybody, whether you're Valentino Rossi or the new guy who just got his motorcycle, right? Everybody's learning at their own rates, and you can still learn even if you're a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fun to hear that, because I feel like there's so many people that kind of discount it. I mean, like you spoke a little bit earlier about the ego of people, and I always speak with my students, with my friends and stuff, and it's like, obviously there's going to be ego. We're in a sport where it's literally, I want to do this, I, right? And it's there's nothing wrong with it. I think there's people with too much ego, but it generally anything in sports related, there's going to be ego, and I don't ever like to use that in like a negative tense. I think that ego is just part of sports. Ego is what makes you better than me and me better than him, and like that's just kind of like knowing your spot and kind of building off of that, but not having too big of an ego to listen to the coach next to you
Yeah.
kind of talk about something. You're like, okay, that's kind of cool. And that's, I mean, in my experience listening to like Michael Gilbert say something to his student, I'm like, oh man, I've been trying to say that to people for years, and now it's like I heard Michael explain it. I'm like, oh, like I'm never gonna forget that. And same thing with
Yeah.
like Pridmore and like all those guys. It's like I think there's so much value to it, especially if you can kind of be accepting of, maybe somebody being like, hey, Eric, cut that off. Like you need to talk like this, and you're like, who would have thought?
Oh yeah, I think it's so valuable. And like what I was working on in the car is I just wasn't having enough rotation on the wheel. I was like just not rotating enough to get closer to my apex in like turn 10 the first couple of times. You're like, more rotation, more. I'm like, I didn't know I could have that and have the car not, uh, resist it, because you're at that point, you're essentially sliding your tires across the pavement most of the time when you're on the track, unless you're on a straightaway. So I'm like, well, on a bike, I don't slide this much. I'm not used to that much sliding of the front. So he's like, yeah, it's fine. Just keep doing it. I'm like, okay, I didn't know the car could do that. That's nice to know. Or just like things that I know that I'm just lacking in or not having as much confidence in. Like he's like, quicker transitions. Why are you taking so long to go from throttle to brake? You need to shorten that time. Like I tell my students that every day, but I'm not doing it. It's just because maybe I'm easing into it. First lap, it's going to be slower than your last lap. But it's like, why didn't I do that from the start? It's like, just, what to do it.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's such I would say like a mind screwball, because you sit there and know you can do it,
Yeah.
and then you just don't. And then like, I mean, I do that in racing where you come into a corner, you're like, man, I could have tugged that another 30 feet.
Yeah.
And then you come in there the next lap, and then you do it again, and you're like, damn it. Like you just go like I get so irritated with myself, because like I'm talking myself through and I'm like, all right, an extra 10 feet, that's good. And then the next lap through, you don't do it. And that's why I was talking about like with Coda being a longer lap time. It's hard to learn a track that's longer, in my opinion, because I mean, you've got a 30-minute session, you've only got 13 laps, if that, you
Mhm.
know. So whereas if you go to Road Atlanta, you have 20 something laps.
Yeah.
and you're there every minute and a half. You're like, okay, well, I got a minute to figure this one out and talk myself into it, and then you're back. But then at Coda, you're like, you're one like Taylor Swift song away from being in there, and
Yeah,
so
it's a lot more information in between that you might forget about, oh yeah, I was supposed to work on this corner.
yeah, yeah. So it's super taxing, and that was what was annoying for me back at Coda. I was like, I kept, like I said, I was kind of off the bench a little bit, and then two, it's like a track that was long and harder to learn, and I'm just like beating myself up because back to like measuring my expectations, did not measure them well, and so I just kind of like beat myself up. I'm like, oh come on, man! Like I just felt like a track day like rookie at that point. I was like, yeah, this is just so bad. Like, deep breath and figure it out.
Well, that track is also one of the more technical tracks in the world. It's probably one of the more difficult ones I can think of. I mean, you got the quadruple apex right, you got tight braking zones, you got elevation, you got really long straightaways. So a lot of S's that lead into each other. So you get one of those corners wrong, you screw up like three or four of them, right?
Yeah, man. The first, I mean, probably 2 sessions, I would screw up at least one part of the racetrack every single lap. And then so in qualifying too, I remember like I was on a really good lap, and then I actually, I wasn't on a really good lap. I had made it through the S's, and I feel like I screwed up every individual part of the S's, and then the rest of my lap was really good. But I was like, I was like, I could not have put together any worse of a lap. And I went quicker, but it was just still like I went through that first sector, and I was like, frick, might as well have been blindfolded. I was like, this is so bad. Because then I came in and I saw my split times. I was like, what a dingbat, dude. It was
Yeah.
so bad.
Now, are you using like MotoGP or like a car racing game, Assetto Corsa, or any simulators to practice for these tracks?
No, not at all. I just kind of, I would like to. I think that there's definitely an advantage to it. Um, I don't do any of that stuff, unfortunately. Um, that's kind of one thing that I want to work on this year. I mean, just in general, like my preparation for my last few years is like you watch people like Brandon Posh and those guys who are able to kind of ride with some frequency. I've not really ever done that. Like I would ride dirt bikes from time to time, and then at least in 2018, 2019, I got to ride on the racetrack all the time, so that was fine. But otherwise, I just kind of show up on race weekends and like, okay, well, let's shoot for the best.
Yeah.
So definitely want to have better preparation for this upcoming season. I'm in good shape, but I'm just not riding nearly enough.
Sure. So I would highly recommend getting a simulator. Now you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to do it. You can put a Logitech system on your dining table and call it a day. But anything with force feedback with a wheel and pedals would be, I think, beneficial because you get that direct feedback from the car and the tires and the tarmac and the bumps and the elevation. It's just wild how much you really feel the car underneath you. And I know it's not a motorcycle, but it's really good for learning the tracks. And you can go to a track that you've never been to before, already having 100 hours or whatever, 1,000 laps at that track and making all the mistakes with no financial consequences. And then going to the track and already knowing the right line, the right gearing for the most part, where to brake, where to turn, all these different things, the scenery, and so when you get there, you're like, oh, I already know this track like the back of my hand. I just need to adapt a little bit for the motorcycle line, change my braking point, gearing a little bit, and I know where to be. So that can help shave off seconds of your lap time. I would say probably the majority of the coaches have simulators in their homes. Now, some of them have like the full motion rig and 3 screens and a VR setup. Some of them have just the basic, cheapest thing possible. But I think it's still beneficial, even if it's the lowest one on the totem pole. Just the next step up from the controller.
Yeah, my brother has a setup that I've used. So the issue with that kind of stuff for me is that I'm so competitive and that I'll just want to get good at it. And then so I will get no sleep.
Yeah.
I'm just like I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna just jump on for an hour. And it's like 4 hours go by and I've been trying to grind out the last 2/10 of a lap and just to be like top 50 in the world.
Sure.
I have a friend Ryan at Chuckwalla, and Ryan and we always every winter I don't know, I think we're playing Forza and stuff, and we'll go sit in his buddy's garage, and we'll kind of like we'll pound out laps trying to be like the top, percentile of the world. And it's like I'll coach all day, then like finish up with my student, and then like go eat, and then rip over to his garage, and then just we start grinding on that. And so I'm like, I don't play any video games at home because that's just what I do. Is like I just want to be good at it. So I'm like I'm so dedicated to it, and that's what I am with golf, man. Like I'm a crappy golfer, but the amount of time, like I just spend so much time at the range trying to like get good at it for no
Yeah.
reason. Like I'm not gonna get any monetary supplement from it, but I'm like I just don't want to do that.
Well, I think that competitive drives pushes you to be good at anything, right? So I think it's good to flex that competitive muscle because you can take that same muscle into something else like motorcycle road racing or whatever venture you do in the future, you know? So yeah, it might not be beneficial financially today for golfing, but maybe that helps you be
Right.
precise with your braking or what, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's definitely it's like a discipline conversation a little bit, right? Where it's,
Yeah.
the people that go to the gym 5, 6 days a week, obviously they're tooling themselves. And it's the same thing. I think it's a mindset for sure, right? Where with
Yeah.
competitive athletes, you gotta, again, the ego, like you gotta kind of work it out a little bit, and you gotta rein it in some aspects, but then you also gotta like flex it out and try to be better than everyone. I mean, that's the only reason we show up to the racetrack, right?
Yep.
So,
And so talking about this discipline, what are you working on with your fitness goals right now?
man, so this year my goal, I wanted to run an ultra marathon, which was actually last week and the one I was going to sign up for. But I have a kind of glute ailment that I've been struggling with basically since February, which is kind of limited. Like my longest run since February has been like 6 miles.
Mm,
Like I haven't been able to string miles together because then it's like as I kind of am running, my glute locks up, and then I'm like, all right, well now I'm gimpy for the next 2 days, and then depressed for the next three. Then all right,
yeah.
now we're back in the gym on on Friday. But yeah, I work out here at a gym in Reno, and we kind of had we work out in blocks and stuff. And this year I've hit my biggest deadlift, my biggest bench, my biggest like I've just PR'd everything. And I had some weightlifting goals that now I don't know if I'm going to do that because my workout program's a little bit different when I'm racing in the sense of like I'm not looking for PR on a bench press, more so just kind of like get functionally strong. So now that I'm kind of thinking about racing again, I don't know what my goals are other than just being in great shape.
Sure.
So probably implementing a lot of running and still doing my weightlifting and stuff and high intensity workouts. But yeah, there's definitely I feel like in the best shape of my life. But I made a post the other day on Instagram where um, I feel like as an athlete, a lot of times we work out just for the goal of achieving something in our discipline, be that racing, be that football, be it whatever it may be. But I think sometimes I feel like that's where you get your burnout, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm just nose to the grindstone. It's like you don't look up and see the scenery, and like you're just kind of drowning yourself in. Okay, I've got like a 6 hour bicycle ride I got to log today. I don't want to do it. But for me, the last I would say 6 months, like specifically, um, I've just enjoyed working out for just the general benefit of health, and I think that's so important for I feel like everyone, like be it an athlete, be it somebody that is a lawyer or whoever. I feel like that's not a lot of people focus on that.
Yeah, it's pretty rare now. I mean, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't post it on Instagram. It wasn't real.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I think I use that stuff like the tracking just to like have a history, and I can see and look back and what I'm doing and see the progress, not to brag or share it with people, right? I mean, that's
Right.
maybe an external validation, but yeah, it feels good to move your body. Like I'm sure you've experienced it. I have in my past where you're really injured and you can't ride. You can't do what you want to do and or even walk. And it's like, man, could you imagine never being able to walk again? Now imagine being able to walk and not doing it, right? Like
Right.
having the ability and not using it. So like I think that sometimes it's important that I went through that bad experience of being really injured to see like, wow, it's so valuable to be able to move my body. It feels so good to be able to run. Like it's it's tough. It's
Yeah.
not easy. It doesn't always feel good to run while you're doing it, but like the end result is I can still run. Like that, I feel like
Yeah.
the more you do, the more you can do. The less you do, the less you'll be able to do. I have a big thought in my mind, like you're gonna rust out before you wear out. Like from inactivity, you're not gonna be able to do it well before you wear out from actually using it.
Yeah, totally. It's funny because I mean, one of the points you made, and I'll draw a parallel because I before we jumped on the meeting or the Zoom call, I was speaking with a friend of mine who used to race like pro motocross and stuff, and he's since retired and he's just kind of you know family man. He's got kid and stuff, and we were talking about it because he doesn't ride so much anymore, and so he had just a weird injury happen, and he's in a cast, like a broken ankle or ligaments and stuff. And we were just talking earlier. He's like, man, like the weird thing about what he's going through now is that obviously with racing, you get hurt and like you can't do racing, like you just can't do it. You can't do a lot of things, but um, I don't know if you feel this way, but I've always felt, I mean, I've been riding motorcycles since I was 4. I'm 24 now. So 20 years of riding, it's like, you know, uh, girlfriend dumps you, you lose your job, you're behind on payments on whatever it is, you've got credit card debt, whatever. You go out there and ride your motorcycle, it's like, okay, whatever. And so I was talking to him and he's like, man, like I don't ride anymore. And so he's like, the one thing that I had in life where it's like, all the stressors are gone. He's like, I don't have it. And it's one of those things where it's really weird to think about. Like it's just one of those things where that's such a part of who we are as people, which is that that little outlet for us riding motorcycles. I mean, for you, it could be behind the wheel of a car, like, but it's like when you can't do that, you learn so much about yourself that maybe sometimes you don't want to know.
Sure.
You don't want to know it.
Sometimes it brings you to dark places, but in another light, it forces you to evolve. If that's really what you want to do, it's like, well, how can I get back to that? And sometimes it takes coaching. Sometimes it takes starting a podcast. Sometimes it takes
Right.
moving across the country, And so it's like wherever the opportunity is, I'm going to try it. Someone told me years ago, if you want sponsorship, get in front of a camera and start talking.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah. It's funny.
yeah, and so like next year, I'm really trying to get back on the grid, any grid, just like you're saying. I don't care what grid. It could be Wera, it could be CCS, or now I'm out on the West Coast. Maybe it's going to be CVMA or Chuckwalla, or like there's Utah, the USB, Utah Sport Bike Association over at Miller, or now it's not Miller anymore.
Right. Utah Motor Campus.
UMC, yeah, Utah Motor Campus. So I want to go there and do there some racing there and get back into it. And I'd love to do Moto America maybe the following season, maybe do a season of expert racing again and try to do Moto America around here and there. I want to also do pro karting, pro go-karting for US Pro Kart Series or Super Karts USA or something, wherever it is. I've been doing karting at work, doing pretty well with that. I'm going to try to enter the kart league race that they have at the end of the month, and see where I go from there. But yeah, just the next few months, try to look for sponsorship like every racer is nowadays in the last few months of the year. So there's actually, I don't know if you've ever considered this, but there's coaches out there for sponsorship, right? Sponsorship coaches who aren't necessarily going to be contacting company XYZ, but will give you the tools and the scripts and the information to be more knowledgeable when you talk to those companies.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's, you know, it's always the outreach for sponsorship that's difficult. And that's something that, uh, it's so much, I feel like sponsorship and just motorsports in general is a foot in the door of you knowing the right people.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, there's time and place too. I mean, like I've had a student that turned out to coach or sponsor me in the future,
Hmm.
and so I mean, there's so much to be said about being a representable person all the time, and not being a tool bag. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely it's interesting. I think that there's definitely room for sponsorship coaching. I've never even considered it. Like that's not even something that I knew existed.
There's three that I'm following their information of right now for free that I haven't paid for. I've talked to one of them on a Zoom call meeting like 3 different times. They're not always cheap because if they can help you raise what $150,000, they deserve a portion of that maybe, or maybe you pay them up front for just their fee of like a couple months of their work, and then you don't pay them any percentages. Like there's different ways to do it. Um, I've gone the sponsorship or not, what is it called? I've gone the management route where you hire a person to do that for you, and that didn't work out so well. Those aren't cheap either, right? So I was thinking maybe a more direct coach that will help you understand the landscape better might be a better option. So some of them are more just social media based and just trying to fix your social media. Some of them are more like, this is what you should say to the sponsor, you know? So
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I've looked at like sponsorship management and stuff like for outreach and whatnot, and it's one of those things where it's like I couldn't imagine a better job where it's like, okay, well, you're gonna pay me this flat rate. Cool. It's call it $4,000 a month. Cool. Um, I'm going to try to get you sponsorship, and then I'll get a percentage of that sponsorship as well. But I can't guarantee I'm gonna get you any sponsorship.
right.
And it's like,
Excuse
what?
me?
like I get it. Like obviously there's no guarantees with anything, but it's like it's it's a win-win for them. It's like, they get $4,000 and you don't get a sponsor out of it, and then you do get a sponsor out of it, and then they make another $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and it's like, whoa, what is this?
I'm in the wrong industry.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm like, geez, I it's nutty to me because obviously the race program is taking all the liability on that one. Like I mean, the overhead is, you pay this person $40,000 a year to maybe get you one sponsor, hopefully.
Right. It needs to be like a paper trail of all the work that's been done, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, processes and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine that there's too many people that have that job, but I mean, I'm sure the ones that do, they're doing all right.
Sure. So really in the end um it's not that crazy of a concept. Like you're just providing marketing and advertising to a company, right? It's not just a sticker on your bike. It's what else are you doing for them? Are you managing their social media? Are you, providing them business to business opportunities? Where they can work with like, for example, the um, Domino's or a pizza joint connects with a hotel company, and they have all of their Domino's pizza in the bedside, end table of every single hotel room. So the kitchen of the hotel doesn't have to staff as many people. It doesn't have to have as much food on hand. And Domino's makes money in that they sell more pizzas. So it's a win-win for both companies. If you can do that, or
Right.
say you have another hotel example, maybe I should go after hotels, but like bars of soap and hotel chains, you could strike up a deal with those two to work together. The pricing was cheaper for the hotel. They saved money. The soap company sold 50,000 bars of soap over the 12-month period. that they wouldn't have to a new supplier or new vendor, you know. So things like that, trying to help companies work together is a big way that is an incentive for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure. I mean, there's so many ways to activate a positive promotion for a company through racing. Um, Finding ways to articulate that in a presentation to whatever the business is. Sometimes it's hard because, I mean, face value, realistically, racing in America isn't that appealing. I mean, you get 13,000 people at the racetrack, which, I mean, isn't terrible, but it's not something where it's these sponsors are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then our TV package is good, but again, it's not numbers that are comparable to prime time anything.
A
So
little
it's
different than football.
yeah, and so, but I mean, then obviously you have the it's back to the ego conversation where those business owners don't really realize that, you know, we're asking for 100 grand and you're getting, you know, the paint of the bike, you're getting that package, right? For a similar package in NASCAR, you're paying millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. But meanwhile, they're still looking at that like, oh, I'd rather do that. It's like, okay, well, I don't really understand your marketing goals, but okay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a different world. Um, NASCAR is interesting. I think NASCAR is getting better recently, and that they're going to like road courses more often. They're doing dirt courses in their regular championship. I don't really follow it too closely, but it seems like they're stepping it up. Did you see in the Le Mans race a couple of months ago where they had the NASCAR entry into that event? They had a NASCAR car, but they souped it up even more, so it competed well with the classes.
You know, I saw it and like I saw videos like floating around the internet. I didn't see results. Did he race in the actual
Yeah, they did
24
the
hour?
whole event, and it was they did pretty well. I don't remember exactly what their finishing position was, but it was an impressive showing.
That's such a trip. I mean, like you see all these like low race cars, then you just have like the Camaro. It's like,
Right?
what is this guy doing here?
Looks a little out of
Like
place.
no aerodynamics. The guys
Right?
might as well be driving a toolbox. Like
Right?
versus these, you know, $1 million vehicles.
Sure. Absolutely. So, do you have any sponsors you want to talk about? Give a shout out to?
You know, right now I'm in that lull, but I I think there's a special shout out to like Revit Leathers, man. They've had my back for the last year and through trials and tribulations of, you know, lack of support and not really being able to race so much. They've always had my back, which has been really I'm really fortunate for. Um, I've got a sponsor, which is the only reason I really was able to kind of capitalize on the Altus ride. Cool Breeze Heating and Air Conditioning. Joe Brown. He's been a part of my program for many years, and he's just a good dude. And we go golf together and stuff, so that's it's a win-win. So having his support's always been great. My family, Pridmore. I mean, all those people that I feel like my perception of sponsorship has changed from I'd rather have sponsors that are more involved in my personal life and you know not just a check in the mail than be like okay cool your sticker's on the bike Todd good to go and then I would say finally it's the Larsons man there's a story of when I crashed the bike at Brainerd, and I had some family friends that came on board, and they're like, "Hey, we'll get you sorted. Like, let's keep moving forward." And so, I mean, they've been friends for a long time, but then they got involved in my program, and I've been very grateful for them. And like I said, they've always been friends of mine, but to have friends that are willing to support you in your passion and your dream, uh, I couldn't imagine anyone else being on your side like that. So
That's great.
really
That's
cool.
good to have a good support system like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, what's it like racing for a team like Altus that has such a reputation behind them?
It's cool. It's definitely cool because I mean, the reputation kind of came right in the middle of when I was kind of coming around. So, I mean, I started racing against Miles Thornton in 2019, I think. Yeah, it was 2019, or 2018. I don't know. And so they started building the program then. And then obviously, after 2019, Cam Peterson came on, and then Jake Lewis, and then like they've just Brandon Posh, and they've kind of had the reputation of good riders, good equipment, and to be able to kind of come in there and see how they run the program was really cool. So that's it's really cool kind of getting to experience different programs in the paddock, especially as I mean, you can kind of, I'm a freelancer, right? Like I don't have a contract with Kawasaki, so I can kind of hop around and figure out you know different experiences with different crews, and so it was cool to kind of experience why they've had this success.
Yeah, and they're on Suzuki's, right?
Yeah, they're on Suzuki's. Yeah, so I luckily I got to ride a Suzuki last year with while Michael Gilbert was unfortunately injured. So I had a little bit of an understanding of the equipment to begin with, but then I mean, my Kawasaki ZX-10 is going to be different from yours, right? So it was definitely there's a little bit of learning still on the equipment too.
Sure. How does the Kawi field versus the Suzuki? Is it wildly different? Are they pretty similar?
Yeah, so I would say there's some similarities and there's some big changes where I would say the biggest difference was for me at first the Kawasaki has an audible traction control where you roll into it and you immediately like, oh, yep, we're skirting edges here. Whereas on the Suzuki, nothing.
Is it silent?
So, yeah. So when you go from racing a platform where for the last 4 years, you roll into it and then you just hear it pop and basically it's warning you like, hey man, like, that back tire ain't too stoked. I'd roll out of it a little bit. And then you go to a machine where it's like, hey man, you're on your own. Like I'm back here supporting you, but like you'll figure this one out. Hopefully you have good feeling. So yeah, I think that was the biggest difference.
Do you like the audible noises? Do you think that's helpful versus the silent treatment?
It's like when you're in a relationship, right? Would you rather have your significant other communicate their feelings or just surprise you one day, like,
Right.
hey, by the way,
Just blow up one day, and that's a high side.
yes, yeah, hey, and welcome to the moon. So, no, I would definitely say there's benefits for me personally on the audible side of it. Again, it's just confidence, kind of being okay with rolling into it, and I mean, it's like that difference of having no TC to having traction control. It's like you go from that difference where it's like you can get the same job accomplished, but what makes you the most comfortable?
I gotcha.
Yeah.
What about geometry or setup changes suspension wise? Does it like to be ridden stiffer or more loose?
Man, that's such a tough question. What I would say is the window on a Gixxer 1000 is a lot tighter of an operating window. Like you want to run it within these bounds and like you're not going too far out of it. On the ZX-10, man, I ran it so far. Like I've told other mechanics what my geometry was, for example, and they look at me like I'm pulling their chain, and I'm like, man, I've got the notes right here.
Yeah,
I'm not lying. And so, I kind of ran an unorthodox program on my Gixxer or on the ZX-10, whereas on the Gixxer, it's like, hey man, you're fitting within the guidelines. That's where you got to be. Figure it out from there. So
do you
definitely.
think it'd be interesting to have, like, I've thought about like a marketplace for setup for motorsports? Would you purchase if there was say you're on identical machinery to like World Superbike, for example, would you purchase the top rider's setup for his bike to try it out on yours?
It's funny you say that. So, would I do it?
Just to test it out to see if it'd be helpful for you.
Yeah, maybe for shits and giggles, I would, obviously. But
given it's the same racetrack, right?
yeah, like so it's funny because like I deal with, many different types of people at Chuckwalla when I'm coaching, and I'll have some guy that's, bought some formula, like just a champion's old bike. He buys the number one bike. He's a novice. He's like, oh, I've got so and so set up, and I've got his gearing and blah blah blah. And then I'm behind him like, this bike is so terrible.
Right.
Like this, I'm watching you ride this, and I don't even know how you got back into the pits. And the thing I see with the most on that is actually the gearing. The amount of times that I see people running 5 seconds, 6, 7 seconds a lap slower than the person they got the gearing from, and be like, oh, well, I got this from so and so.
Yeah,
It's
well, it
like,
doesn't matter until you get your skills better, right?
yeah, the guy's going 40 mph faster than you at the end of the straightaway. That gearing is null. You do not need that gearing whatsoever. And so would I do the marketplace? I think it'd be interesting for sure. But man, it would screw so many people up. I couldn't even
Yeah, you gotta
imagine people
go.
buying like,
You gotta go based on your own skill level. Yeah, if the guy's, a full-on professional, it's your first track day, it's not gonna matter really what the setup is. I mean, when I first went to the track, I would say going from a street bike to now it's a track bike, you should flush your forks, get new fork oil, and set the bike to your weight and your riding ability. After that, it's like a night and day change. But going to a full racer setup, it's going to be so stiff for you, you're not going to be able to ride it. It's going to feel so awkward because you're not at that limit yet.
yeah, you don't even know why you're doing things. Like
Right.
you're putting softer springs in the bike because somebody told you to, not because you went into the turn and you're like, oh, I'm not using a bunch of travel.
Right.
People don't know what they're doing on a motorcycle generally, and so it's one of those things where it's so easy for. I mean, I was one of the people. My dad was one of the people. I have friends that are those people. I have friends that used to be, but it's like you ask around the racetrack because you generally don't know, and then you have someone say go softer, somebody say lengthen the shock, somebody say you need a longer swing arm, and then you have three different things, and like sometimes people throw all of it at the bike, sometimes people pick one just because, and it's like you just spin yourself out, and then now you're got a Frankenstein bike of 17 different crew chiefs that's also their third track day, but they work at the cycle gear, so they know. So
No,
yeah, it's definitely a trip.
everybody's got their own opinion. So who do you listen to?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's especially at a track day, man. And I just couldn't even imagine. Like, it's yeah, everyone's got an opinion. That's for sure.
And you got to take everybody's opinion with a grain of salt. And you're like, just nodding, When can I walk away from this guy now, right? Because he's been here for 2 minutes and he's telling me what to do.
You know what I had, and so I always bring this up because obviously, I don't know if I'm more known as an instructor now since I haven't raced too much, but I've had people come up to me, and they know me as I'm an instructor, right? And so I've had people come up and say, "Hey, Andrew, like, what do you do through turn 3?" And I tell them what I do through turn 3, and then in the same breath of me telling them what I do or what I suggest, they're like, "Oh, well, so and so said something else, so like I don't know, like what makes you say that?" I'm like, I don't have to defend myself. You came to me asking for advice. Like,
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
why do you like? It's so weird to me that people would do that too. And it's like I've had it happen multiple times where people are kind of like, "Hey, like, like I think you're wrong," and I'm like,
That's okay. You
"Okay."
can go out there and try it.
And I was like, I didn't, I never go seeking to give people advice unless like it's dire. Like if you watch somebody going to do a turn, you're like, if I don't help you now, I don't think you'll make it through there the next time.
Right.
Um, I think that was only happened once for me, but yeah, the people that seek you, then ask you the question, and then immediately like start arguing with you. I'm like just completely blindsided. I'm like, I don't even know how we got in this situation.
Sometimes I think that they don't think it's true. Like you're lying to them. Like I told somebody at our kart track, I'm like, I use no brakes through turn 1. They're like, that's not possible. I'm like, well, if you brake there, it's gonna be slower. They're like, yeah, but you're gonna hit the wall. I'm like, not if you take it right. I'm
Yeah,
just
right.
I just lift and then back on the throttle. I have the rotation again with the throttle. You counter steer a little bit. It's fine. And they're like, there's no way, you can't do that. Like, okay, what do you want me to say after that?
No, no.
Just did it 10 times in a row. You want me to do it again?
Right? Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the whole arguing on advice thing is so funny.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're asking because you don't have the answer. Then you start arguing with somebody. It's like, what are we on? What are we doing
Right.
here? Why are we doing this?
Right. So to wrap up, I think we're getting up to close to 2 hours with that little blip at the beginning. So anything else you want to talk about before we end things up?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on. It was nice to catch up after a few years. We'll do same time in 2 years. What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's put it on the schedule. 2025. Let's do it.
Right? Just circle back around every 2 years.
Sure. Yeah, every once in a while, I just reach out to people who have already podcasted with, try to get their follow-up story. If there's anybody you have in your mind who you think would be good for this, please let me know. Where can people find you online? Where are you out there on the internet?
Well, I'm not out there enough, but I'm on 2 major platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. My Facebook page is Andrew Lee Racing. Pretty straightforward there. And then my Instagram is Andrew_Lee 14. So
All right. Very good. Got the race number in there. I like it. So like I said, I have a couple of podcasts and stuff to edit and publish. And then I'll get yours out. I'll be sure to tag you. Please share it, and we'll go from there.
thank you so much, man. You have a great night.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon. Have a good one.
See you in a couple of years.
For sure.